So I'm going to start out on our web page, and it's just really just to kind of touch on the four core categories that we touch on with our product suite. And the four categories are going to be document capture and automation. So, when you talk about document management, when you're storing documents to even a file share folder on your network, right? You got to get those documents in somehow. You got to scan those in at a copier or a desktop scanner, and then you got to file them and name them, and you got to put in all the information that's related to it. So we have some tools that can automate that and make it more efficient for you and your organization. Enterprise content management, that is the core of our system where we store documents and apply metadata and information about the document to make it easily searchable and retrievable after you've put it into the system. Business process management. So we'll talk a little bit about our product called Global Action and what you can do with that, where based on criteria that we've collected from the document. So invoice processing, where we need to approve invoices before they're paid. We can plug in logic behind the scenes and create a workflow that will make sure that those documents get to the proper people in an electronic format where they can approve those documents and move that on through the system. And then lastly, our web forms management. So Global Forms is a product that we offer. It's an electronic forms that can be accessed from a web browser. You can publish these on your website. You can have anyone access this form and fill it out. And it's another way of capturing that data. A lot of times we talk about, redundancy, where we're having to enter the same information over and over and over again. Well, with web forms management, we can relieve some of that stress and that pain of those redundant entries. So without further ado, let's jump into the software and take a look at what we just kind of uncovered with these four categories. So when we get into global search, the first thing that you're going to notice is these archives over here on the left-hand side. Now we'll talk about queues here in a little bit. What we want to focus on first is these archives. So you can think of an archive as a folder or a department, right? So what we're looking at here is our Business Essentials template. This is a system, a solution that has been pre-configured and built that is ready out of the box. So if you like what you see here, you can easily implement this and roll it out within your organization very quickly. As Donnie mentioned, with our promo right now with unlimited storage through the end of May, one of the other things that we're offering is if you go with our cloud instance of our C2 product and you go with Business Essentials, we can guarantee a 24-hour turnaround from the minute you decide to move forward with that solution. It's that easy and quick to spin up and give you access immediately to for your end users to start storing and scanning documents into the system. So now you probably noticed when I clicked on accounts payable, I got this view over here on the right where up at the top I've got these tabs. Now these tabs are configured to relate to the type of document that is in accounts payable. So you can see where we've got vendor invoices, purchase orders, and then delivery confirmations. Now, if this is something that you don't have to use this is just a feature that we turned on to kind of give you the idea and show you how we can separate those documents out into different categories to make it easier to search and retrieve. Now, once you're in an archive, you can simply just click on the archive, look through and see the type of see the documents, see the vendor names and the information. If you know exactly where you're going and you want to just click on that document, you can easily just double click on that document itself and open it up in the viewer. Or what we also recommend is using our search feature. So let's say that I'm an accounts payable clerk. I get a call from a vendor. They're requesting payment. They're wanting to know where their payment is. They sent this invoice in over 3 weeks ago, and they still haven't received their check. So as accounts payable clerk, I can just simply ask, hey, what is that invoice number? And I can run a search for that invoice number. And what the system's going to do, it's going to go out, it's going to find every document that has that invoice number within the invoice number index field, and it's going to pull those documents back. If you notice here, I've got 2 that I pull back within our accounts payable archive. I've got an invoice and I've got a delivery confirmation. So as a accounts payable clerk, I can come in, take a look at this invoice, and determine why they haven't received payment, right? So I can look at this, I can look at my index fields, I can see that this document, this invoice was over 100,000. You know, that takes another level of approval. So more than likely, it's being delayed just because the person that needs to approve that is on vacation this week. So I can go ahead and let that vendor know, hey, you know what? This is over 100,000. It's going to take a little bit longer to get approved and paid. You could expect that check in 2 to 3 weeks. If not, call me back and we'll do a little bit more research. So very quick and easy way of what I would call first call response completion, right? Where I'm taking care of that customer immediately. Where in today what might happen is I may have to put that person on hold, go to the filing cabinet, pull out that vendor's folder, and thumb through a number of different invoices to find the one that I'm looking for. So in this case, I can narrow that search down to the exact document that I'm searching for. Yeah, and you may be thinking, okay, this looks good. I like the idea here, but how do I get all these documents and all this information into the system, right? So we've got several different ways of getting documents into the system. We can either use a desktop scanner. So I can connect to a desktop scanner sitting on my desk and pull those documents in. I can also import from files. So I can go out and scroll to a folder to import that information into the system. Now, the other way that people like doing it is via the drag and drop method. So if I came over here to my folder here and I wanted to pull in an invoice, I could just grab an invoice and just drag it over the archive and release that document. So what's going to happen is it's going to drop that document into that archive and open it up in a viewer. Now, the one thing that you've probably noticed already is that this is very similar to the viewer that we've seen before, right? Where we're looking at that document. In this case, though, we have 0 data for that document. This is where we would just come in and start typing out our index fields. We would start populating these fields and filling it out. But I'm not big on typing. So what we have is a feature called key-free index. So what we're going to do right now is we're taking that document, which was a flat, just an image of a PDF of that invoice, and none of this text and things were text searchable on that document. So we just did a OCR, optical character recognition, on this document, and now we've pulled all this text out of the document where we can use it to index off of. So in this case, I'm on my vendor name, and when I hover over something, you can see where it's pulling that information out, and it actually tells me what index field I'm on at this moment. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and fill out Dunlop Manufacturing. My document date's going to be this invoice date, my invoice number, my PO number, and then down here is my amount. And one thing I wanted to point out, if you notice, a little red asterisk out here beside the amount. So we made this. I made this field required. So you can make fields required. So when your end users are putting documents into the system, we can make particular fields required. Where once that document hits the system, if that's not a field that's in there, it's not going to let me save that document. So if you notice, I have the save highlighted. If I take this amount out, it's not going to let me save it anymore, right? So we've got to have that amount in there before we can save this document and put it into the system. That's really key to think about, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here shortly when we look at our queues. So, and then my last thing is choosing which type of document this is. So in this case, this is a vendor invoice. So I'm just going to choose vendor invoice from this drop-down list. Now this is a list that that is configurable. And going back on the fact that this is a pre-built template of business essentials, don't get hung up on the fact that, hey, I don't like these field names. I don't want to. I like the concept, but I want to change some stuff. You can easily change this on the back end. Very easy to change. And we also offer our own e-learning for our customer base, free of charge. We have a number of different e-learning uh, uh, tests that you can go through and courses that you can go through and teach yourself how to work global search and its many features. So I'm going to jump out of this, I'm going to go back to my global search, and we're going to take a look at a couple of other archives here and some of the search capabilities. So in accounts payable, we talked about just doing a overall search with our, typing out an invoice number. We can actually do a number of different things where we can enter multiple fields. So let's say that I did an invoice number search and I pulled back multiple invoices with the number 2804. I could actually narrow that search down to just that CF Martin invoice and pull just that invoice in, right? So I can get very granular with my searches. Another couple of other things that we can do with these searches is, if you notice here, I've got I have the ability to do like invoices in the last 30 days. So if we're looking at doing some type of ad hoc workflow, is what I would call it, where we can run a search and pull back any invoices that have come in the last 30 days, and then we know that we need to process those invoices or do something with those invoices. We can also do a search by invoices by vendor or purchase orders, where if I just wanted to pull back those invoices from vendor, I could go ahead and just run a quick search and pull just those invoices from that vendor. So we can narrow those searches down. So imagine, imagine your boss comes in and says, "Hey, I want to see all the invoice, or I want to know how much we paid vendor this year." We could run a search and narrow that down, and then we could come in, we could select all of these, and then we could just export that data out as an Excel document. So we can pull all that data out. We're going to pull all these index fields out, and then we can just easily hand that over. Where within some systems, you're having to sit there and actually build that report out manually. So this is just a quick, easy way of pulling some data out of the system that we've collected, right? So imagine you're in HR, right? So human resources has a they have their challenges as far as onboarding employees and managing all the documents and keeping those documents secure and compliant within your organization. So in this case, we've got an auditor that's come in. They said, "Hey, I need to see all the documents that came in, or all the I-9s from this 715 to I put the wrong year there. 715 to 2015." So what I can do is I can run a quick search and narrow that down to just the half of that year of 2015, and I can pull back all the employees that we hired with this document date is the date that we brought in that I-9, and my auditor was looking for those documents. So imagine, if they asked you today and you have it in paper format, you got all these documents stored in file folders, you would have to go to your HR system or some type of maybe you got an Excel spreadsheet where then you would narrow down all those people via that report, right? And then you would go to the filing cabinet and start pulling all those I-9s from all those people. We did a quick search and was able to do it within a couple of seconds, right? So being able to reply and being within compliancy when you're being audited for a number of different things, not just HR, but this is just another example of some of the searches that we can run within a archive that can narrow those searches, narrow that down to make it easier for you to find that information. So, human resources, accounts payable, The other two archives that we have in here are contracts and accounts receivable. So within accounts receivable, I always think about, I've had a customer that called me up. There was Blues Note. They're telling me that they have a particular delivery that they did not receive uh, uh, a particular item on that delivery, right? So I can do a search, and the one I just did was I just put in half of the customer name. I just typed in Blues, and then I told it, just pull me back all those delivery receipts. The customer didn't have an order number in front of him. He couldn't give me that information, so I could narrow that search down. But he did know that it came in somewhere around December the 7th. So if I had multiple delivery receipts here, I'd be able to narrow that down pretty quickly based on the date. So I pull up in this document, right? And I'm looking at this delivery receipt, and he's telling me that he didn't receive these Martin guitars. And I'm looking at this. I look at this delivery receipt and I say, well, it shows that y'all received these on 12/5, but the initials were MAM. Oh, that's Mark in logistics. You know what? Let me go talk to him and find out um, what happened with those guitars. And while I'm on the phone with him, I say, hey, you know what? Let me do this for you. Let me go ahead and highlight the highlight this information here using our little annotations tool. I'm gonna highlight that, and I'm gonna go ahead and let me just circle this where it shows that Mark received it. So now what I can do with this document is I can actually email this document out with those annotations and send it to the customer. So now they can print that out and take it down to shipping and receiving and talk to Mark and say, hey, look, we can't find these two guitars. You signed off on this and showing that you received the two, but we only have one. And then they can come to a resolution pretty quickly of what happened to that guitar. Now, while I'm in here, while I'm adding these annotations, maybe I'd like to add something else to this, like a post-it note. So I can add a little post-it note to my document as well, where I can give anybody else that's coming in here some information about this particular uh, 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 delivery receipt, and that the customer called stating that they didn't receive the um, uh, Martin guitar. One. So, we can add these little post-it notes and things like that. Now, these are just overlays. So if I wanted to delete one of these, I could easily just right-click on the document and delete it. We can remove these fairly easily. We can go ahead and save those, but they're overlays, and that's what gives us that ability to either. That's why it's asking me, hey, do you want to add in the annotations or no annotations to this email? So I can choose how I want to send that out and give it to the customer. Now, some of the other annotations that we have, just real quick, we can do some redaction. So you had some information that you wanted to hide from particular people and individuals, you can go ahead and redact that information. One of the cool things about this feature here is through our security policies, we can prevent certain people from actually removing that and looking at what's behind it. So if you have sensitive information and you want to give everybody access to it, but you want to hide particular fields and information on the page, you can go ahead and do that with those security features. Now, go ahead and get out of that. Now, while I was on the phone with this customer, he was telling me that y'all been hitting me up on this invoice, and they were telling me that we had net 30 terms, and when we negotiated this agreement with you guys, you gave us 60 net terms. So while I'm on the phone with them, I have the capability of taking a look at this. And what I want to do is I'm gonna run a search. And again, I know it's Blues Note, and I'm just going to look for the word term. So I'm going to run a search for the word term, and you can see that I got one executed copy, okay? And I've got 5 hits for that word term. So what I've done is I've ran a content search. Um, and think of this as PDF, like, when you're doing a control F within a PDF where you're trying to find particular keywords in a document. What we want to do is we have this ability to look across the whole archive and search every single document that is full text searchable and pull out those keywords and focus on just those words within that search. So in this case, I found 5 results with the word term, and I can actually scroll through. And if you notice, it'll change colors to show me where I'm at when I'm scrolling through these, right? So I can quickly come in here and look for those net terms for that document, for that information. Now, I can see here that we have a net 30 terms on this contract. So I'm on the phone with this guy talking to him and say, look, you signed this back uh, on the 14th of November, and it clearly stated 30 terms. Now, I'd be more than happy to change that. I have the authority to do that. So let's go ahead and just create a new supplier agreement for you, and we can send that over and have you sign it and get you back to normal with your supply agreement with your net terms. So under contracts, I have these templates. These are Word documents, as you can see with the icon. And when I come into one of these documents, what I can do is I can launch this document. So maybe you want to keep you want to have those Word documents, the template stored somewhere where, this is our boilerplate, this is what has been approved and guaranteed that anytime somebody needs to create a new supplier agreement, this is where you would come to get that document, right? So what I can do is I can come in and launch this into Word and go ahead and create a new supplier agreement for this particular customer. Now, I'm not going to bore you with my typing. I'm just going to put in a couple of things here. 17. And then it's for Blues Notes, Blues Note, music. And then I'm going to go ahead and change this term to 60. Now I'm ready for them to sign off on this document, right? I'm going to create this. I'm going to execute this document. So I'm going to use this little handy tool that we've got, Print to Global Search, which essentially just takes this document, converts it to a PDF, and stores it within Global Search. So my contract party is going to be Blues Note Music. Document date, I'll go with today's date. And I'm just going to call this supplier agreement revised 60, net 60. And this is an executed document. So I'm going to save this. I'm just going to close out of this template. Not going to save it because it is a template. I'm going to close this out. And then once I go back in to my contracts and I go to my executed copies, I should see my new supplier agreement with a revised net 60. Now, I've got my document created. I can come in, verify that everything is correct on my executed contract before sending out, and then we can use our DocuSign integration to send that document out for signature. So at this point, you have a DocuSign account, you would log in with your username and password. you have your templates built out, send that document out for signature. Once that document's been signed, we can upload that back into Global Search and have a signed, executed copy of that document. All right, so we talked about, now that is a quick overview of a Global Search, which is our document management product. Now what we're going to do is we're going to kind of shift gears a little bit, and we're going to jump into Global Capture. But before that, I did want to show one other thing. So we were talking about doing our searches where we would come in and search on a particular document using one of our pre-built searches here. Right now, let's say that you have another system that you an accounting system like QuickBooks or Microsoft Dynamics, and you have information that's already stored. In this case, I've got my Dunlop Manufacturing account, and then I can see all my open invoices in here. So imagine customer calls you up, they say, hey, got this invoice, they give you the invoice number, you're already open in the system, and you want to just go ahead and access that document right from your accounting system. So what we can do is we use what we call image exchange, and using just a hotkey, so you can create any type of hotkey that you would like. And in this case, I just did Alt X or Alt S, and then what it did is it went out and it looked up that invoice number and pulled that back from the screen here. So I just hovered my mouse over this, right? Hit Alt S, and what we did is we basically just did a screen scrape, and we're telling it, hey, look where my mouse is, and then when you see some text in that layer, just go ahead and extract all that and run a search. And even if it picked up other stuff in this area, it knows it's going to make a comparison. It's going to find that 03598352 and run that search on that document and pull that particular invoice back immediately and launch it in Global Search. So nice little handy tool. A lot of people talk about integrating, their products, their accounting system or their human resources system with our product. These are quick and easy ways of integrating without having to create and write up APIs and things like that, which we also offer and have. But these are quick and easy, quick gets for us to pull back that information. Now, what we want to talk about is global capture. So we talked about being able to index documents with that key-free indexing and manually bringing those invoices into the system. Now this takes it a little bit further, where let's say that I've got a couple of hundred invoices that come in a day, and it's only me and one other person in accounts payable, and we're trying to process all these invoices at one time, and we get overloaded, right? I've been in offices where I've seen a stack of invoices, and they're 3 weeks behind because they just don't have the time to take all that data, each one of those invoices and manually enter all of that data into their accounting system and file it away, right? So what we can do with something like Global Capture is we can import those documents. So we can either watch a folder or an email address that I'm using invoices as a example here, where we're taking these invoices in, we're separating them out into individual documents, and then we classify it. So we take a look at the document and we say, what are we train the system and we tell it to look for particular things on the page to identify it as a invoice for that vendor. And once we classify it, we go ahead and we start extracting all the data automatically. So we're pulling the invoice number and the vendor name and the amounts and the dates and the PO numbers and things like that. And then we release it out to Global Search in this instance. Now, this is a standalone product, so if you wanted to release this out to a folder somewhere, or let's say we wanted to extract all that data and put it into a flat file that we want to have our accounting system ingest and to eliminate some of that manual entry that we're having to do, we can do that as well. So in this case, I'm just gonna we're just releasing it out to the archive. Now, let's say that an invoice hasn't been trained yet. Okay, people are always adding new invoices, or they're changing invoices. They're changing the format of their invoice, and we need to be able to identify those and not have them go into Neverland, right? I mean, we need to be able to say, hey, we didn't recognize this thing, this document. What do we want to do with it, right? So we create what we call this validation step. So if the document is not recognized by the system, it's going to go into an unclassified state, and it's going to drop into this validation. And that's what we're going to take a look at right now. So you can see where I've got, this is our batch manager, and this shows every single process. Every time that there's a document that hits this import node here, it's going to create a batch, okay? And it's gonna follow that document. We're gonna record a history of every single node and everything that it's done. So if anything ever happens to that document, we know we can follow the steps, right? We can do some investigation to figure out where that document went. And then we can also look at our process field. So we can see that, we extracted the document date, which was 11/16/18. We extracted an amount. We extracted a vendor name. Now, I noticed this one right here that's in yellow. It's a validation step, which means that it failed classification. So as an end user, what I can do is I can come in here and I say, okay, I want to validate this document. So we can pull this open. And we give you a number of different choices. Okay, we can go ahead and use our key-free indexing again, where we can index this document. So maybe it's a one-off. We don't get this invoice very often. I don't want to spend all the time to build this, build this classification out for this invoice. Let's go ahead and just index it and get it out of the way. Or let's say I wanted to delete the document. I can delete this document. So, if you're monitoring an email address, a lot of times what happens is, the local restaurants find out what that email address is, and they'll start sending you menus, right? So you need a way to get that stuff out of there, out of the system. You don't want to have to process it all the way through. So we can delete those documents. Now, in this case, I want to train the system to identify this Martin invoice. So the next time that it comes in, it's going to notice, and it's going to say, hey, this is a Martin invoice, and here's where to extract all this data. So in that case, I'm just going to hit this rapid adapt, and I'm going to add a marker. Now, this is the same thing that you saw before, where we're loading that key-free OCR. So it's the same type of concept, and it's going to give me the same functionality, but now I'm building out this template for the system to recognize moving forward. So what we want to do is we want to pick some keywords that are going to be specific to this invoice. In this case, I could use the address, right? We know that nobody else is going to have 5110 Sycamore Street. And then maybe I use the phone number as another one. And then, maybe I want to do invoice, because what we could do is we could have that same email address be monitoring for purchase orders, delivery receipts, a number of different things. So we can classify each individual document type and run them all through the system, right? So now that I've built my template and added those markers, the next thing that I want to do is build my zones, right? So I'm just going to click Add Zone, and then I'm just going to draw a little blue line over vendor name, right? And then I'm just going to tell the system, hey, this is where the vendor name is going to be. So extract this data, okay? And I can do date, right? And if you notice, I'm drawing some little fine lines. The system doesn't care about the box. So this is not really zonal OCR. What it's doing is it as long as the text is touching that line, it's going to recognize and it's going to automatically build a box around that text. So different from the old days with like zonal OCR, where it had to be exactly on top of it and exactly in the right place every time to extract that data. but you get the picture where I can build this zone, build this information out, where the next time this invoice hits the system, it's either scanned in or brought in via email. It's going to find, it's going to look at the top half of every page, and when it sees 510 Sycamore and that phone number and invoice, it's going to say, ah, this is a CF Martin invoice. Now I need to start extracting all this data from it. And we don't have to do this ever again to this invoice, right? They change their invoice or they change their formatting a little bit. All we do is come in and build a new one and tell the system to be able to recognize the new one. So you're rapid adapting to your vendor's environment, right? So you're able to create this once and move on and do something else. So that is global capture in a nutshell. Now, there's other things that we can do here. We have the ability to extract barcodes and 3D barcodes and things like that. So number of different possibilities with our capture product. Now, you may be thinking, hey, this looks really cool, but this must be pretty expensive to build out and create. Well, what we've done is just like our Business Essentials platform, where we give you this pre-built template. What we've also done with Global Capture is we've created a system called our Solutions Delivery Network, where we've gone out and we've built particular workflows, and we've given you the ability, as long as you have a license of our Global Capture software, you can come out to go into Global Capture. You can go in and you can actually import those workflows automatically, right? So under our Business Essentials, that AP Invoices Rapid Adapt, that is what we were just looking at. Okay, so we give you these as being a customer of ours. And you notice we've got a number of different ones. We've got one for delivery receipts for accounts receivable, which works exactly like our AP, but it's going to be grabbing delivery receipts. We have one for contracts. We saw the contracts that we created earlier. So let's say that we created those contracts and we weren't using something like DocuSign to get the signature. We could send those out and then have them send those back and import those in and change them or store them into the system. We can grab our W-4s or I-9s. So we have a number of different pre-built templates for you to use at your discretion, right? And what I see a lot of people do is they take these and they learn from those and they build off of that. They build off of that and make it their own. None of this stuff is limited to expanding on, right? You can build as much as you want with the product. So the last thing we're going to look at is our forms package. So now this is a HR onboarding landing page. So this is just an idea of what we've seen other customers use the forms package for. And what they've basically done is they've given this, created a landing page for a new employment, new hire to come in, and they can fill this information out. Now, they can do it at home, right? I mean, before they ever came in, when I came to work at Square 9, before I ever set foot in the building, I'd already completed all of my onboarding documents. They sent me a link. I logged in. I created a username and login. I logged in, filled out my information. It sent me an email verification with all of the PDFs attached of all the documents that I just filled out for my own personal storage to have for myself, right? And then that way, first day I go into the office, I'm not spending all day filling out paperwork. So this is just the landing page that we created, but you can see where we've got our background check authorization. Now, once we go in here, we can start filling out our information, right? And what you're going to notice is you have these little red asterisk. So just like our required fields within global search, we have the same thing within here, where we can prevent people from filling out and moving on to the next step without completing um, the form, right? So in this case, I feel like looking for T. So in this case, I can move on to my background check authorization. So I filled out my information. I have an electronic signature where I can sign. Um, and then my date field is going to be automatically populated. And then I just submit for authorization. All right. Now, I go back and you can see where I can start going through and filling out each one of those. Right. Now, if you're interested, we have a forms gallery piece that you can access from our website. And this gives you a number of different forms and samples of other things that we can do. Okay, so here's our landing page that we were just looking at. But let's take a look at let's say this I-9. So I can come in and fill out an I-9 electronically. And then once I've submitted this document, right, um, it's going to take all of this data and actually lay it down on top of that original PDF for that I-9, and now I have that original version where I filled this out and submitted it. What I really like about the forms package is, when you get types of forms where, if you answer yes to this, uh, you know, fill out A, B, and C. If you answer no, skip to number 3. So, a lot of times what would happen with people filling out forms is they wouldn't fill out the form correctly. They didn't read the instructions, or and I had one customer that, onboarding documents, it took them all day long, and it took 2 people to help help a new hire fill out the forms package. It was amazing how many documents there were. And we took all of those forms, we digitized them, we turned them into initially smart forms, right? Where if you answered no to this question, it would skip you all the way to, page 6. And the reason why we were doing that is we would give people the ability to, it would make it easier for them to fill out those forms. So we took a process that took 8 hours that first day, we narrowed it down to about 4 hours, and the individual was able to do that on their own. There were helpful hints along the way where we would give them hints on what to do at a particular section of the form. There were video links where they could click on a video and watch a tutorial on how to fill out a section or explain a section of the form to them. So, number of different avenues to take with the global forms piece. So, and all of these forms, everything that you've looked at today is all web-based. We do have on-premise or cloud options for most of our products. But when I speak about web-based or browser-based, all of our products are accessed through a browser client, which eliminates the need for installing software on every desktop or every laptop that you have. Anybody can access this software via a browser client, whether it be Google, Internet, Explorer, Edge, Safari, all the major ones, Firefox. It's going to work with any of those versions of browsers, and you can access this from anywhere. So that concludes our demo today. I hope everybody enjoyed what they saw. Before we finish, I wanted to give everybody a quick opportunity to ask any questions that they may have before we jump off here. So if you have any questions, please feel free to just type it in the All right, so got a question, how much is this? That's a great question. Depends on what all you want to see in want in the product. Our base system is based off of a concurrent user model, um, and depending on if you want to go with the cloud or on premise, the pricing may vary. Um, our global capture, um, a lot of capture pieces products will charge per image. We do not charge per image. Um, so there's no charge there, and you would just pay for the server itself and the licensing for it. Forms, we base forms off of how many forms you want to purchase. So if we go from one form, you can add, then there's a break where you get up to 5 forms. There's a price break there, and then we can go all the way up to unlimited forms. Um, Security. So security is based off of a number of very secure system where we can base it off of either the document archive, what level anybody has to access the system. We can control that very granular through our security uh, 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 setup when we're setting up the client's uh, environment. Cloud security, via the cloud, we are SOC 1 and 2 compliant. We just passed our uh, compliancy, and actually, there's something on our website about that. Can't remember where we put that on the website. Oh, compliance. Yeah, being in the cloud, we had to make sure that we passed all of our compliancy uh, certifications. All right, perfect. Well, it looks like we are winding down on the questions. So hopefully, like I said, hopefully everybody found something that was informative here. Um, and if you have any more questions or would like to dig a little bit deeper and find out what would be, perfect for you and your organization, please feel free to reach out to Donnie with JD Young, and we'd be more than happy to set up a call to discuss uh, options moving forward. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time and attendance. Have a great day.